Hello. Hello. Oh, that's funny. Hey, Marcus.
Hey,
Are you in the office?
yeah,
Okay.
I had to print some stuff off for the open house this weekend, so
Where's your open house?
it's on like it's closer to the UWM campus
Oh, nice.
on Kramer Street.
Okay. Good deal. Hmm. All right. Hi,
Hello,
Robbie. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good. So do you guys have your zip forms? What I'd like to have you be able to do is to see our Zoom, maybe, small up in the corner, and then have your zip form open so that you can actually be live writing an offer.
Yep.
Okay. And so Marcus, do you have the address of the property that you're hosting open? Let's
At
take a look at it.
2920 North Kramer Street.
Okay. Hmm. Why does it say no results found? That's interesting. Hi, Ebony.
You want me to send it inside the chat?
Um,
Hi,
I'm
I'm trying to get my zip forms up.
yeah, I know. I'm looking in MLS as I
Mhm.
wanted to just pull up a property. So I'm looking at Kramer. Let's see here. How much is it? Do you know?
Yeah, it is 509 right now.
Oh, well, that's a nice little listing. Hi,
Mhm.
Dana. She's still connecting to audio.
Hello. Sorry, that took me a moment.
That's okay. I know. I always see like this like little, rotating audio saying that you're joining. Yeah, that's weird, Marcus. I'm not seeing that property. I'm just looking up a quick property that we can write an offer on while we're together here. Because we want to just run through.
Do you want the MLS number?
Yeah, give me that.
Okay, 1721576.
Okay. All right. So let's see here. So Rebecca has this one for 509. And let's see if there's anything. Inclusions. Oh, you're going to want to bring a buyer to this one. There's a $1,500 selling bonus.
Mhm.
All right. Okay. So everybody got their zip forms up? You able to
Yes.
put us in like a smaller screen? Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. All right. And we'll just make this as big as possible. And Marcus, do you want to just put your MLS number in the chat box? And then everyone can pull up this MLS number. And we're going to write an offer on this property. All right. So first thing we're going to do, you can all see my screen. So obviously you're in your zip forms and we're going to go ahead and we're going to sign in. So what we want to do is we want to start a new transaction. And has anyone on the call started templates yet?
No.
Okay, so Marcus has because he's my mentee. And so I cracked the whip and he's got that going. Okay, so what we're gonna do, I'll show you quickly how you would start a template so that you can work on this later. So after we have this offer built, then you can use this as your sample and you can go in and you can build out your own templates. So instead of starting a transaction here, and hopefully you guys can all see my mouse when I kind of roll it around like this, but instead of starting transaction, you would hit templates. And so you would start a new template. So you'd click on that green wording there. And you'll see what pops up on my screen is I already have 4 templates built. And so what is really great is to do condos, because if you do think that you'll be entertaining condo buyers or sellers, condo offers are a little bit different. So you want to have those built and ready to go. By having a template, you can save at least 30 minutes when you go to write your offer. So having a single family and having a listing and a purchase in single family is going to be greatly beneficial for you. So when you open up templates, you're not going to have these. So you're going to hit new. And then whatever you're doing, whether you're doing the listing or you're doing the offer, in this case, you'd be doing an offer. So you're going to hit the one that has the cute little dollar symbol there. And once you hit that, it's going to ask you what this is. On the right side, you can see it's asking me if this is a personal, and it is, because this is not like an office-wide template. It's not like a global, like international KW template. So you would keep it as personal, and then you would name it similarly to what I did, where I said Steph, single family purchase. You know, whether you want to name it that, you can just use your name and name it as your single family purchase. Of course, it would be residential. And then the key is down here where it says select a template. And you're like, wait, but I'm creating a template. Well, yeah, you want to build your own template. So you want to pick the office. So you see when I grab this on mine, it's going to be a little different than what you guys have, because you're going to have just the global. I have my personal ones that I built here. So what you're going to want to do, we're doing an offer purchase for a single family. You would want to grab global purchase residential. And when you do that, it's going to pull in all of the documents that we need. So last week I was reviewing offers for someone. And so even when you start a new transaction, you can come and you can grab and apply a template, whether it's your own built one, where like on addendum A, you have your name and your license and our office address. Who wants to type those things every single time, right? And then you're like, okay, I know my license number because I had to memorize it, but what's the office number? I don't have that one memorized. So you're looking, and so when you don't grab one of the office templates, what happens is I had an agent who sent me an Appleton Addendum A. I went, wow, that's cute. You know, it's like 6 pages long, has all kinds of different verbiage than ours. We don't want to use that. You know, there is in the Milwaukee Metro, there is also a 2-page Addendum A. We don't want to use that either because the 4-page GMAR, the Greater Milwaukee Association of Realtors, 4-page Addendum A is going to give us more protections and it's going to give us the pieces that we want. So to create your own template, you would click, you know, that you wanted the purchase residential, and then you would hit save. I'm going to cancel out because I don't need to create another one. Okay, so that's just a quick to do on how you can go in and create your own template. We can do that part later on your own. And this is being recorded. So you guys will have this video sent out and you will be able to, you know, repeat this action. So starting a new offer, if we want to then just go simply to transactions. It's the second one over on the top bar. And just holler, you know, if I'm going too fast or if you're not tracking with where I'm at, and then we'll, you know, get caught up. So we go to transactions, and then you can see I've got all my little property cards in here. Some of these are sample ones, but we would start with new, and we're going to do an offer to purchase. So we click the money. And so this one is going to be our 2920 North Kramer Street. And you can see it gives me Milwaukee as an option up there. So that's going to be our property. It is going to be residential because it's a 2-unit. And we're going to pick a template. So for you guys, we're going to grab the global purchase residential as your template so that you have all of the correct documents that we need for our New Berlin office. Is everybody with me?
Yes.
Okay. It's hard because 3 of you, I can't see your faces. So I don't know where you're at or what you're tracking with. Okay, so it's creating our new piece for us. And of course we get this pop-up message, which we're going to ignore. So this gives us the summary. It's telling us, you know, who, where our address is. What we want to do first is assign the parties. So right up top here in the gray bar, you've got parties. And so you see that yourself as the agent, you're there. And so it has you as the selling agent and broker. So then over on the left, it gives us options to add in a buyer. So if you want, you can put me in as your buyer, because then you're going to be able to send me your offer. And I'm just going to put in Marcus, because this was his property. And so my email is Sosa, S-O-S-A, sells, S-E-L-L-S, at kw.com. And Marcus is yours, Marcus Martinez?
Yeah, Marcus Martinez at kw.com. I'll type in the chat.
All right. All right, so everybody's with us so far? Just give me a holler if you're not.
Yes.
You put in buyer's name. You guys are going to have Stephanie Sosa and Sosa sells at kw.com. They don't have a signing representative. So we're just going to hit save then. So now I've got myself and Marcus. So I'm the agent, you guys will have yourself as the agent, and you'll have me as your buyer. So I don't need to put in a ton of other things on here. Really, we're just going to get into the heart of our offer and go in on our documents. So you should all have a screen that looks like this.
No. Mm-mm.
No.
No.
Okay. Did you grab, did you assign a template when you opened up your offer transaction?
I need to go to documents. Is that correct?
Yes. So you started
Mine-
out at salary, then we went to parties, and then we
Okay.
go to documents.
Mine are in a list rather than blocks.
Okay. So you can click right here. Do you see my mouse?
Yep. Thank you.
There's a list. Yeah. So I just like having them like this because then I can see them. It depends on what works best for you. Okay. But so basically everyone does have all their documents and they're all here like this, right? Okay. Since I'm not hearing any screaming, we're going to keep going. So what we can do is we can use this button here on the top right, which says organize. So a lot of these forms you're not going to use. So we can simplify our process here. So buyer agency is first, and hopefully you guys all have them in the same order as me. If not, I don't know why, but so you have buyer agency, we're going to use that. Then you have the NBR disclosure. That's great.
And I have the prestige disclosure.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yes. Great. Because you're under Germantown. Perfect. Okay. Good. So the disclosure to customers, we shouldn't need unless we're not signing a buyer agency with them. So if we're signing a buyer agency, then that's our representation. If you meet them at an open house and they don't want buyer agency, say it's your listing, then you need to do the disclosure to customers because that's going to disclose that you're working on behalf of the seller. So you need to pick at the earliest of conversations with your client, you know, who am I representing? Because that tells you how you can actually talk with them and what information you can provide. You have your offer to purchase. Maybe this is just because I've manipulated mine, that mine came in this order.
Mm-mm.
No, yours isn't.
In our two.
Okay, so you have your GMAR, Addendum A, and you have your HSA application. And again, the HSA application is important. Even if you're not asking for a home warranty from the seller, you want to have the HSA application. And I'm just going to open mine so you can see it. Down here at the bottom, if you are not ordering a warranty, you can have your client sign the waiver. This is very beneficial for our office because it would save us the $2,500 deductible in the event that there was a lawsuit on a property. So the two key ingredients to help you is either A, having a warranty or having a waiver on the warranty. And then the second one is having a home inspection, or you put in additional provisions. There's a little clause you can add where they indicate that they are waiving their right to have a home inspection. So those two pieces help you with your errors and omissions insurance. Okay.
If I got a question.
Yeah.
For the HSA, so if like the homeowner is not offering a warranty, you ask your client if they would like to get one. And if they decline, then you have them fill out that sheet.
Yep, absolutely. So if the buyer would like to ask the homeowner for a warranty, they have every right to. So they can ask. And, sometimes the seller will say, no, you're offering too little. You're also asking for closing costs. I'm not paying for a warranty. Guess what? All of my mechanicals and appliances are brand new. Why are you making me spend $500 on some insurance policy that isn't really going to cover anything because everything is new? So for whatever reason, your seller might argue that fact and they may not provide it. The buyer then has the option in haggling through their offer. Do they still really want it? Is it important to them? And they can always purchase it themselves. You could be a blessing and buy it for someone. I don't know who's feeling in the generous spirit right now for $490, but or you could like split it with the buyer or something like that. But just know that, like Ebony said, if you're not getting one provided from the seller, if the buyer isn't buying one themselves, you want to have this file in your this form in your file and have the waiver signed. Okay. So then we've got the counter offer, we have our amendment, cancellation. Here's that prestige disclosure that Peggy was talking about. So you've got other pieces in here for you. So these are in a great order. I know that someday I'm going to need my permission to deliver loan commitment. You're going to be watching your loan commitment, and you need this form to accompany the buyer's loan commitment letter, so that you have permission to actually send that over, and you're essentially waiving, the buyer's financing contingency then. So all these other forms are here for us in case we need them. So the buyer agency, if you want to open that up. And this you would have likely signed when you first started your working relationship with your client. If not, you definitely would be doing it then at the time that you're signing your offer, because line 1 and 2 of your offer to purchase are critical. We need to know, who are you representing? If you don't do any strikeouts on line 1 and 2 of your offer, we have no clue what kind of representation you have. So we really need for you to be filling out this form, and hopefully it's at the start of your working relationship, because otherwise you're going into homes and you're like, lips are sealed. Like, I'm just a door opener. If I were your buyer agent, I could, help you out. I could give you wise counsel. I can negotiate on your behalf. And guess what? The seller basically still pays me. So, why wouldn't you want someone in your corner fighting for you? So on the buyer agency, we're going to cross off. Again, we have to know, who are you representing? You're not typically a tenant's representative. Most people in Wisconsin aren't paying for property management services to realtors in that sense. So you're working as a buyer's agent. You can see on line 12 here, I've typed in all Wisconsin properties. Why do I do this? You might say 250 to 350. Well, let's say that Marcus is out shopping with this client and they say that they want a single family, but now they decided, well, I don't mind living with my sister, or I don't mind making some rent off of someone else. Let's buy a duplex. So, if you're saying single family properties, 250 to 350, you're really limiting. If someone decides that they're pre-approved only up to 250, but somehow they're going to cash in some retirement funds, the market, is a tight seller's market like it is now. Maybe they have to look at a property that's 225. They have to bid 10 or 15 grand over that. Are you then still protected? This document doesn't go to the listing agent. So in that sense, you're fine in terms of being paid a commission. But if a transaction were to go into a lawsuit for some reason, an attorney could say, well, the buyer bought, for 230 or 240, they bought a for sale by owner, and your price point is beneath what they ended up buying. They're not obligated to pay you a buyer agency commission. So it's all about protecting yourself. And again, like I said, on the Discord and on the Zoom call, the meeting today, the majority of real estate lawsuits happen during an agent's first 3 transactions. And that's where we really want to get you equipped and knowledgeable and very just skilled at working through the offer to purchase. So excluded properties, we don't have any. Maybe they did, if they were working with someone before, or if they went and saw a for sale by owner, you could put that down. Not really important at this moment for us, because I want to just get through this and get us into the meat of the offer. On line 35, what is your compensation? A lot of times I see people put 2.4%. Okay, what is that? 2.4% of, so you want to be very clear. And we're saying 2.4% of purchase price. Now,
That was automatically in. That was already in mine.
the 2.4. Okay.
Yes.
And that's where, maybe because this is like a global template, things are not perfect. So I'm giving you advice on how to, be very specific and spell things out, be a little bit more detailed.
Great.
So 2.4% of purchase price. Now, what happens if this client comes upon, say, a Shore West special project listing and they're only offering 2.0? What would you guys do in that situation?
Well, you would have to accept the 2.0. So what you would want to put in here is, or as described in MLS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And are you, does that help if I blow up my screen? Yeah.
Yes.
So I have 2.4% of purchase price or percentage offered in MLS. Now, for some of you, you're like, no way. Somebody owes me that 0.4%. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to decide, and you have to know this up front, because your client needs to have an understanding. If it's 2.4% of purchase price, and you go and you find a property that is only offering 2.0, you need to back up and have this discussion. And you need to be saying, hey, just so you're aware, we have a contract signed that says I will be paid 2.4%. This property is only offering 2.0. So, what is that? 0.4. So Marcus's property here is $500,000 times 0.4%. I mean, that's $2,000 on this. On an average property, if you're looking at something for like $250, you're looking at $1,000. So, I mean, it just, it depends. For me, I made a personal decision in my business that I'm not going to penalize the client based on what home they find. If they find a foreclosure, an estate, some limited service listing, whatever, if I have to work for it, the best house for my client is the best house for me, because they're happy, they're getting in their home, and I want to be their realtor for life. It's totally up to you what you decide that you would like to charge here. Same token, on line 46, would you like to charge a buyer agency fee? That is up to you. It's your business, and you can run it how you see fit. Just know that if you would like to charge a buyer agency fee, you need to put that on here. If someone does not close, then you also need to be putting, how is it due and payable? Are you going to get it no matter what? We work together for 3 months. I try and find you a house. You don't get one, I still get $395. How is that paid? Obviously it has to go into the office. You cannot take a check directly. All, funds that we are earning need to go in to the office. So just, making a note on that. We're just going to skip through that page. So typically I have this first option checked because typically that's how you would be. You would be a designated agent. And so let's say that Marcus has this listing. I come in and bring in my buyer. Both of us work for KW. So we both work for the house for, the firm, but he's representing the seller and I'm representing the buyer. So we can work together. We still can't talk out of turn and tell each other, hey, just get this offer, get the amendment, counter me this, and we'll get this done. You cannot talk out of school like that. Whether it's a Shore West, First Weber, Coldwell Banker, whomever, you can't be doing that. You can lose your license for a job that hopefully you love doing. But typically you would, be indicating that the same firm can represent. I always tell my clients that if we're going to avoid any KW listed property, you're going to lose out on what 160 realtors have access to. Why do you want to do that? You want to have a trust relationship with me, that we can work together and that I'm going to represent your best interest. And I'm not going to go telling this other agent things that are actually confidential. Right? So then looking at not confidential, they must provide source of funds, right? Seller does not know this buyer at all. So they need to provide a pre-approval letter or proof of funds. So if someone has 400 grand in their 401k, they can provide you with a most recent, hopefully it's within 60 days, a most recent statement from their 401k, from their bank. Sometimes people don't want to show that. I mean, they can like cross off with a black Sharpie their account number, but it should say their name and their address and how much they have. Otherwise, if someone doesn't want to provide a financial statement, they can go in and chat with the personal banker. The banker can say, let's say we're writing on this house, it's 509. The banker can say, Marcus Martinez has in excess of $500,000 on deposit with our institution. They don't have to say exactly, maybe he's got $1 million, right? You don't want to disclose all of that. As long as they say he has in excess of whatever that purchase price is, then you're fine. Okay, so moving on. We're essentially going to be skipping this whole page about rent. We don't need to really fill it in. You can tell I like to do the little dashes on everything. I just don't want a line where someone else could fill something in after my client has signed. So I kind of go dash crazy. And then we get down here. So then clients, recipient for delivery. So for you guys, this would be Steph Sosa, because I'm going to be your buyer. For me though, Marcus Martinez is going to be my buyer. And so the firm's representation, for delivery is going to be your name. So Ebony Cobbs, Keller Williams. And then we're not going to fill out faxing, commercial delivery, or mail. We don't want mailing addresses on here. We're not going to hire, who was that like delivery agent? It was like a quick delivery or something. I don't know. We're not hiring them. So we're going to email. We're in the email age. So I'm just going to have here my guy's email address. And then I'm going to have my email address. Typically on a buyer agency, you're not going to have additional provisions and you won't have any additional addenda that you're going to be attaching. And we need to pick a time frame that we're going to work together. So Marcus, I'm going to work with you for 3 months. Okay. And he's like, oh my gosh, that's so long. And I'm like, you know what? Normally it's 6 months, but right now things are going so fast. I'm going to get you into property and we're going to be good. So we're just going to go to March 15th. So you need to have dates in here. Otherwise your contract is not valid. So I can go here and I can mark a date for Marcus to sign. And then when I get this out later into signing, I'll be able to drag and drop a signature field for him right here. But that happens once we're in DocuSign.
Right.
And then if I scroll down, if Marcus were not himself, let's say it's Martinez Development LLC, then Marcus is not signing up here. Then we would have Marcus Martinez, comma, member. Or let's say that people own their house in a trust. Let's say that Katie, I see your name on here. Katie is selling a property and they're going to buy, and they own their current house in a trust. She needs to collect their trust documents and provide that to the title company. When she writes her offer, it's not going to be Joe and Susie Smith. It's going to be the Smith Revocable Trust or Irrevocable Trust, whatever their trust name is. And so then they would be signing as trustee. Everybody good with that? Any questions thus far?
I'm sorry if I missed you saying this, but on line 336, the notwithstanding, do we need to strike the shall or shall not?
Oh, sure. It does say shall if neither is stricken. And you're right, Katie, thank you. I do like to actually do the strikeouts. And if you've had an offer reviewed by me, you'll know that I'm really picky about doing the strikeouts and not leaving it for someone to read and interpret. You know, like if you have well and septic and it's like shall or shall not, or you have your home inspection or your radon, if you're not striking it, it's not like right there in your face. So yeah, the firm and client agree that this agreement shall end when client acquires an interest in property. And so what you do to strike out is you first highlight and then you go up to the top and then you grab strikeout. Oh, did it go? That's so funny because it's way down here. There. So that did strikeout. So yeah, you're just going to highlight it first and then you hit strikeout. Everybody good with the buyer agency? Excellent.
Yes.
All right. So then if we go back, so I'm going to hit save. Remember always to hit save on everything before you leave. It's really important. Okay. So then we're going to hit our back button. You can see it's up there on the left side. It's in green.
Yep.
We hit back. And then let's get into the heart of our offer here. Now that we know that we're representing our client. Oh, so because I have a template built and because I input the property address and my client's name, some of this got filled out for me already. And I'm going to blow this up so you guys can really see the screen here. Okay. So the most critical thing, and I know you guys kind of laughed in the beginning when I said we have to know on lines 1 and 2 of the offer to purchase, who are you working for? Because I have seen countless offers without this on. So if you're signing a buyer agency, you are working on behalf of the buyer. So you're going to cross out everything on line 2. Now, here's an interesting quirk. I was reviewing an offer for someone yesterday where they were looking at writing an offer for themselves. What you do then in that case is you're going to highlight agent of, and if I can get my strikeout, I blew it up too big. I would hit strikeout. And so the only thing that would exist here is the word buyer. Now, if you're going to be writing an offer for yourself, please reach out to me because there are some extra things that need to be done. You may not collect a commission. You cannot get paid a check. There's 2 ways that you can get incentivized. One is by a reduction in the purchase price. And you would essentially want to explain this to your co-broke at the time that you're writing the offer. And saying that, you know, my 2.4, and I have to check with Cindy. I'll get back to you guys on on what the rule is on how many personal properties you can do per year, because it's not you who's waiving a 2.4 co-broke commission. Because guess what? In MLS, when they put their listing in, they're not promising to pay, Peg or Catherine 2.4%. They're promising to pay KW Milwaukee Southwest 2.4%. And so, there's certain things that have to happen with the office in order for them not to collect that. And so I'll get back to you. I'll get an email out. I don't want to spend too much time on that at the moment. But essentially, you could either get a closing cost credit for the equivalent of 2.4% of the purchase price, or, say you were going to go in at $100,000 on something, you're going to shave off $2,400 off your price, and you're going to then explain. Now, you cannot mandate to the listing agent that they have to drop their commission off of 6%. But in a logical world, right, this would make sense that if you're getting $2,400 as a closing cost credit on your $100,000 house, that they would not be charging that 2.4%. Whether they're on a 3.6 or if they're on, 3.1, who cares what their side is, but they should not be collecting a full 6%. So we're going to table that discussion. And if you're buying on your own, talk to me directly and I will get you guys a follow-up email on that. So obviously we have to have a date, right? When are we starting this offer? It's a legally binding contract. So dates and deadlines are really critical. So we've struck it out. And so if you guys are in your zip forms, follow along and do all of these steps. I want you to actually have a completed offer to purchase when we are done with this. So go and highlight line 2 and then grab the strikeout button at the top. So if you saw in the chat box earlier, Marcus gave us an MLS number. The property is 2920 North Kramer Street. So on my separate screen over here, I've got our MLS data sheet that I can refer to. And so this is in the city of Milwaukee, which is also the county of Milwaukee. So this is a little interesting. A lot of times I see people put nothing here, and then they put Milwaukee, and then they see Milwaukee County, and so they don't put anything here, but you have to follow with your commas. So you're in the blank of, that means city, town, village, and then, Milwaukee, and then it says county of blank, and then Wisconsin. So all of these things have to be filled out and filled out correctly. So this is 509. Marcus, what are we going to offer on this?
505.
Really? We're lowballing.
Oh yeah.
It's one day on the market.
It's 1 day on the market of the newest price. It's been on the market for like longer than that. We just did a price reduction of $10,000 because it was on the market for
All right.
a lot longer than it should have been.
So let's look at this. Good job, Marcus. All right. So if we look at the history, we can see, yes, they've been on the market 1 day, but they were expired 35 days. They were at 529. And then they were at 599, 569. They should be excited to get Marcus's offer. And they're offering this selling bonus of $1,500. Anybody know someone who wants to buy a East Side duplex? 500? All right. So we've got our data sheet here. So I'm gonna go back to report. All right. So he wants to offer 505. So everyone is gonna write 505. And then of course your number your words automatically populate out here. Then what I did is in my template, I have all of these things typed out. For me personally, it's easier for me to delete things than it is for me to go and type every one of these things out. So I'm going to look at my document here and I'm going to reference what is included. So we have stove, fridge, and you don't have to write oven/range. I mean, just write stove. You know, they get it. Unless there's like a cooktop and then like a wall oven, then you could spell those out. So stove, fridge, disposal, dishwasher, microwave, washer, dryer, window air conditioners. And then it says other. So let's look in private remarks. Is there something in the other? So fancy pantsy. They got a Wolf stove. They got a Sub-Zero fridge. There is a range and a griddle, 2 washers, 2 dryers, 5 window air units. So we want to make sure that we're calling these all out. And does everybody know what EDO is?
No.
Anybody want to guess what EDO is? Anybody? Really? You guys don't know?
Oh.
Electric door opener.
Oh,
It's your garage. Yeah. So we're going to get in here. I'm going to tweak my wording a little bit. So we're going to have Sub-Zero refrigerator. We're going to have a Wolf stove. Then we're going to put range/griddle, microwave, dishwasher, 2 washers, 2 dryers. I said garage door openers and window treatments. Now we're missing the 5 AC units. So I go 5 window AC units.
you can also cut and paste that from the MLS.
Yep. So you
Okay.
could go, yeah, because I had mine typed, I just decided to alter mine, but you could go here and you can copy this and then you can paste it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not all in one line. Sometimes it's in, part of it is in private remarks. So you want to make sure that you're reading not only appliances included here, but that you're also checking what's in inclusions, what's in private remarks. Is there anything else that we need to know?
They had disposal listed, but
Sure.
really?
Yeah.
Who rips that out of a sink?
Someone should not be taking it out, but I've seen stranger things. I went to, I had this happen twice with like foreclosures, where we went in the morning of closing for our final walkthrough. And one, we're in the basement and I'm looking around and you got your nice big laundry tub and there were faucets on it before. I'm like, what's going on? What looks so different? So then I'm tracking and I look over by the water heater. All the copper piping was off on the water heater. I'm like, oh my gosh. So we went through the house and we found a couple other things that were taken. But one house that was over by Alverno, by Jackson Park, totally stripped. Like ceiling fixtures, light fixtures off the ceilings, every cabinet doorknob, like every door handle, plumbing stuff, and then the whole basement. And the hysterical thing was the basement had been drywalled and all framed in, but they had had water. And so this is kind of like my Howard listing. There was only drywall up, you know, from like waist high up to the ceiling. So the bottom where all your electrical was strung in. So we go in the basement and we're like, oh my gosh, there's just 2x4s. All the Romex is gone. Like these people stripped every outlet, like this family that was going to buy this house, they were just going to go in and re-drywall the bottom half and then paint everything and put carpet in, and the basement would have been great. I'm like, oh my gosh. So, all right, moving right along. So we have our inclusions. So not included in purchase price. Guess what this says right here?
Seller's personal property.
Do we need to type seller's personal property if this says seller's personal property?
Shouldn't have to.
No,
No.
that's redundant. I see it all the time. I see other realtors sending me offers. They don't need to do that. So I'm just training you. You don't need to do it. Unless there's something particular, like let's say that they said that, they want to keep the dining room, like Italian glass chandelier, right? Well, then what's going to happen when they take it down? Are they replacing it with a new one? So then in additional provisions, you'd have to put something, seller shall replace dining room chandelier with what? Maybe they're just going to put up like a light bulb and the buyer has something in mind and they're going to fix it. So they're just going to put like a little $5 light fixture or, like a basement light bulb socket or something, but something needs to be there because when you go for appraisal, you can't have just a little wire like whip hanging down. That's not kosher. All right. So probably, there will be some things swing set. Here's the deal. Like if it's not discussed in the MLS data sheet, you need to bring it up because if the seller doesn't want the swing set and they leave it there, but let's say the buyer doesn't want the swing set, who gets to be the happy little person to remove a swing set the day of closing?
We do.
Yay! Yes, we don't need to be taking down swing sets. This is not our job. Our job is contractual. So we need to know and manage everything. How about a safe? Like a big 5 foot, 5 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot cube, a huge like 400-pound safe. What if the seller can't get that out of there?
Or a pool table, right? A
What?
pool table becomes a
Well, I just had a seller tell me, well, I have it on Facebook Marketplace. I'm going to try and get it out. But, if not, it's theirs. I said, no, they don't want it. They wrote it here as an exclusion. So as a buyer's agent, you need to be cognizant of what is in this house. Is there a freezer in the basement and it's like older than dirt? And it probably isn't functioning. And if it is, like the energy bill is super high. You need to be aware what is in this house. Okay. What about water softeners?
Are they owned?
Are they owned? Exactly. There's water conditioners, water softeners, all kinds of stuff. You got a reverse osmosis. Anyone ever see like a dental tap on the kitchen counter? That's an RO system. So if the listing agent did not do a good job spelling this stuff out on their MLS data sheet, you need to ask, you need to figure it out. You can never assume. The other thing I like to look at is, what about these big TVs, right? You got this 80-inch TV hanging on the wall. Okay, it's on a mounting bracket. Can you leave the mounting bracket? Because if you take that mounting bracket off, the cost and fix up on that wall, unless the buyer isn't going to put their TV there, or if they don't have that same size, some people, freak out because the mounting bracket was so expensive. Normal mounting brackets are like $15 to $40. I know there's some that like swivel and twist and lean out and you can rotate them. But at the end of the day, does that seller want to repair the wall? And this is where we get into trouble, where we don't discuss what happens with the things that come off the wall. If the buyer is going to be nitpicky about painting, patching, and filling, all these holes, you look at like, grandma's got her wall of shame. You got every picture, since 1950 of, little Jimmy, right? And, now he's how old, but so you want to look at what's going to happen, and you need to address that, because if it's not discussed, everyone just assumes. And think about perspective. Everyone's perspective, well, it'll be fine. They'll just hang other pictures on that wall. Okay, do they have 50 pictures, honestly, to replace and, to patch all of this? What if they didn't plan on painting? Because, someone says, well, I'm sure they don't like my colors. They're just going to repaint anyway. No, actually, they were just going to move in. They weren't going to paint. So what happens? You need to discuss these because there are potential problems that could arise. So it's better to bring it up and get it out in the open. And sometimes the chance for discussion on this is more so at home inspection. Now you and the buyer are in the house for 1.5 to 3 hours, depending on the type of inspector that you have out there. And we're sitting there and we're thinking, okay, let's look at the walls. Let's look at what's going to happen when all this stuff comes down. So think about that in here. But if you're assuming that a swing set is going to be gone, or you're assuming it's going to stay, you need to discuss all of those items. Any questions? Everybody's good?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just rolling down here and checking. Okay. All right. So then we can scroll down, binding acceptance. Okay. Here's a real big question. Have you called your listing agent? You asked them, do you have any offers? When can you present? Why do you think that's important?
So you can know how much time to give them to review and get back to you with your offer.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And where should your buyer be going in? So how much time does the seller need? Seller's at work right now. I got an offer once at like 3:30, and it said, answer is due by 5 o'clock. I went, okay, first of all, my guy works in a factory. He cannot answer his phone. He gets off at like 5:30 or 6, and, I can't get in touch with him, but I was heading out the door going on showings. That agent was really ridiculous for not calling me. And, I just said, hey, I can't even get the guy on the phone, let alone I'm not going to be near a computer in order to process this offer and explain it to him and get, signatures back to you. Now, if you're not going to accept the offer as is, when do you have the opportunity to counter? Do you need to counter by the deadline that they put for binding acceptance?
Yes.
Anybody else?
No, I don't think you do.
No.
That'll be counter
Can-
off.
Yeah, you can let the binding acceptance date lapse
Mm-hmm.
and then create a counteroffer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if Catherine lowballs me by 20 grand, I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. First of all, write me a decent offer, then I'll respond to you. No, I'm just kidding. But I can talk to my seller and say, okay, Catherine asked for an offer by 6 p.m. tonight. We can't meet that deadline. We don't have to, unless we want to accept her right now as is. We don't have to respond to her. We can respond tomorrow. We can respond in 2 days. Now, is it polite of me to communicate, hey, we're going to be countering, but we're going to sleep on it. We'll get back to you. Seller has 3 other showings tomorrow, and they're really just not excited about your offer, quite honestly. So they're going to see what happens tomorrow. And then, if nothing else comes in, we'll send you a counter. So you're communicating, you're letting them know, but I'm not going to jump and respond by 6 o'clock. It's just not feasible. Okay. So if you want to accept it as is, you have to accept within that time frame. Now, can you still accept it like an hour or two later? Sure. But if the buyer has not gone out and written an offer on something else, so you still have the opportunity, and most buyers would be like, yes, 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 please accept my offer. And likely they're not running out an hour later and writing on something else, but you never know. Okay, so this transaction should be closed on. Who should you talk to in order to find out when you can close?
The listing agent and your buyer,
And
Lender.
the lender.
yes, so the listing agent, I always will call and ask my listing agent, hey, what is the seller's preferred closing date? Because if we miss the mark on that one, if it's going to be an inconvenience to the seller, it's going to be emotional upheaval and all of this, they physically cannot get packed. They cannot get moved out in time. Their place is not available until February 1st. And I'm trying to run in there January 10th. I'm going to put these people out. I want to have open communication with my lister, and I want to find out, hey, what works best for them? Because maybe not everything in my offer is going to be like, yay, seller loves this. But if I can try to accommodate the seller in some ways, it might, overtake the other ways where I'm, so maybe Peg writes an offer for 210 with a closing date of, January 10th, but I write an offer for 205 of February 1st. Well, to them, they might counter me and say, okay, can you come up like 3,000? We like your date and we really like everything else about your offer, but someone else wrote us higher. They might go back to Peg and say, hey, we love your offer, but that's not feasible. We can't get out of here. Can you flex on the date? So you might get, them just talking to one person and verbally countering. You might get them doing a multiple counter. You never know what a seller's going to do. And that's where you want to try and put your best foot forward. The lender, though, is going to be super critical. Some like credit unions right now, if you're trying to do a VA or an FHA, I had a gal who wanted to go out with USAA because they're great for vets, right? Well, they couldn't close for 70 days. Now, my lender can close in 30 days. Boom, done. All right. Now, what's best here? What's best for the buyer at the end of the day? You got to work within these parameters. If you don't check in with your lender, that's a problem. And we'll talk about this in the financing section. There's something else that I've been seeing on some offers. And so we'll discuss that. So what I always like to do, and you'll see on here how I have this, I like to write in on line 48, and this is just built into my template. At the place selected by buyer's lender. Who's got the money? Who's really ultimately closing this transaction? The lender. They're in charge. So the lender might close in-house. They might close it themselves. The loan officer might close it. They might have an attorney that they use, or they might have their own preferred title rep that they use. In a day and age when sellers are pre-signing, sellers do not really need to be there. Sellers sign like 5 pieces of paper. Why are we catering to a place designated by the seller? We should be running on the buyer's schedule and where the buyer and lender feel fit. I had people once buying in Racine, and the seller ordered title from like Germantown, and they wanted us to all haul up and go close in Germantown. Why does that make sense? We need to be closing close to where it's convenient for the buyer. Okay, so it's critical that at the top of page 2, you put in your full address with your zip code, because this is going to carry down through all of your other pages.
Already there.
Yeah. So sometimes it populates, it depends on where you put it in. If you put it in on the like the summary page, it should filter through. If you put it in just on your line 1 of the offer, it won't carry through. You would have to type it here and then it would go down on all the even pages. So earnest money, this is one that I've been seeing quite often as well. How often is it that, let's see, who else can I pick on here? Keep saying your names. All right, so Dana's going to write me an offer. How often is it that Dana is in the office with her client, with their checkbook? She's writing an offer on my listing, and Dana's going to come and hand me the offer and an earnest money check. That's not happening.
Not often.
Yeah, that's not happening. So rather, Dana would write the offer saying, no money accompanies the offer, because the offers come in electronically. And you're probably not going to send money through MLS trust funds upfront before actually having an accepted offer. So the rule of thumb with earnest money is 1%. So in this deal, we're writing on this $500,000 property. I should not be giving $3,000. I should theoretically in our marketplace be giving more like 5,000. If I want to stand out, if I want to make my offer strong, I can give more earnest money saying, hey, I'm so interested in this house. I feel like there's not going to be a lot that comes up from home inspection. I want to give you some money to hold as security so that, I'm giving you, that security deposit. Catherine, do you have your hand raised?
I do.
Okay. And I
Use
can't
the-
everyone
use the-
shout if you do and I don't call on you because
Oh, no worries. I just wanted to know, go back to line 48. And then do we cross out at the place selected by seller?
yeah, so I talked about it. I didn't specifically say, but
Okay.
yes, you want to strike out at the place selected by seller.
Okay.
And if you do this on your template, you'll do it one time. These are things you don't have to remember every single time you go into your offer. What I'm trying to do is get you from a 2-hour offer down to like 45 to 60 minutes. We're going to be doing time saving. Working smart, efficiently, but also working intelligently on the offer. So when you have a template or a sample, you can use it to work off of when you're in the heat of the moment and you're frantically trying to get something done. You left the property at 4 and the lister is requiring all offers in by 6 and you're like, what? So we're going to get you, set up. So earnest money, you've got your $5,000 earnest money and it's due within 3 days. Now with MLS trust funds, it's really easy. You can set up an email to your client. You set up a password for them and they can pay it online. It's a $5 service fee for that. It's really easy. Then we don't worry about the mail. I had one lost in the mail last month and the agent was calling me screaming and saying that we were out of contract because they didn't have their earnest money. And so she forgot to write something on the mailing address and it got there, but like 2 days late. But because of the postmark, we were fine because it had been postmarked within our 3-day time frame. So you can see here we have everything crossed out except for the listing firm, because the lister is going to hold the earnest money, not you. So if I'm writing, I'm not holding. It's the listing office that's going to be holding the money. In some instances, you have a small like boutique real estate brokerage, and they actually have a title company hold it. We then are going to strike out listing firm because the listing firm is not holding it. They're advising you in private remarks that they want, attorney's title, merit title, you know, to hold. So then you would strike out this listing firm in that case. Okay. All right. Time is of the essence. It really is. I mean, for everything, I don't know when I've said it's not. So I'm going to leave everything here and I'm just going to put a dash there. Everything is imperative. You have to do it within the dates and deadlines set forth in the contract. Your real estate condition report, you're going to go and find the date of that. So we're going to look on our documents. Uh-oh. Where are the documents? Huh. Listing agent does not have docs out on this file. And because it was built prior to 1978, we need an addendum S. So I would be emailing then the agent and saying, hey, I need your RECR and your addendum S. And you want to get those, you know, right away prior to writing your offer, because you need to put your date in here.
Did you get coffee for me?
If you don't have it and you have not have it, if you don't have it yet, then I would cross this out, which was received by buyer prior to buyer signing this offer, right? Because we're not going to say that they received it if they didn't. Whoop, I want to highlight all of that. Now, there is a provision in here that says that, you know, the buyer shall be supplied with a copy no later than 10 days after acceptance. But I just want to acknowledge here that we did not yet get it. I'm going to unstrike that out. Oops. Uh-oh. Oh, don't you love that when your computer highlights like every line? I just want to get rid of this strikeout. Oh yeah. There. So to unstrike something, you highlight it and you hit strikeout again. If you can get your computer to actually highlight the lines that you want. Oh, why it's not.
Mine's doing the same thing.
Yeah, it's being really sensitive. So you don't want to be striking out lines randomly, and you don't want to be taking things out of the offer in a normal circumstance. But that's one where if the client did not yet get the RECR prior to signing, you can't say which was received prior to, you know, signing this offer. Okay. So normally you're not going to say anything here. If it's a case where it's an estate and they're not supplying one, you could indicate, you know, just a dash or an NA here, and then you could indicate buyer hereby acknowledges no RECR will be provided. In the case of new construction, they are exempt based on Chapter 709. So a new construction property would not be providing. It has not been lived in yet. Okay, so going down here, we're now on page 4. So we have our address at the top, and we're going to ask for a home inspection. We want to check in with our home inspectors to see, hey, buddy, what do you got available? Because, you know, if the agent is saying, hey, I've got like 5 offers, try and tighten up all your timeframes, make it as, you know, lucrative as possible for the seller. You can't go and put in like 7 days if you don't know without a shadow of a doubt that you can get a home inspector to the property and renegotiate your terms by 7 days. So again, this is not just we get the guy out there on day 12. This is we have to get an amendment. we renegotiate, or we send a cancellation, all on or before day 12. So the seller shall and shall not have right to cure is a fun discussion. Everyone has a different take on this. And, I would say, in a perfect world, if you could say for a buyer, seller shall not have right to cure, because then if there is something that's hugely alarming, then they can just walk without having to give the seller the right to remedy that. If someone is hugely like mold averse, you're not checking your attics before you're going, but we know that probably 7 out of 10 homes have mold issues in the attic because roofers either don't go up in there and check when they're re-roofing, and they don't look at the ventilation, or homeowners go in and they stuff insulation all the way into the peak, so the attics are basically suffocating if you don't have good airflow and circulation in there. But if a buyer is just absolutely no way, even if they remedy it, I will not take a house that has mold, then you really need to have a serious discussion with them about seller shall not and crossing out your shall. In most cases, I think most people are willing to say, hey, as long as the seller is willing to fix something, I'm good. But if you say that seller shall not, the listing agent may look at you and go, okay, well, you just want an excuse to get out. You just want to run. What if there's like a $300 electrical item? Are you guys going to escape the contract? Well, no, of course I would ask you, I would give you an amendment and I would say, hey, please remedy this. Sometimes it's a matter of just talking through with the listing agent, because I've seen it done before where in a busy market like what we have now, seller, directed, the seller's sitting there looking at 8 offers and like, shall, okay, shall not. And they toss those out without even looking at them for the merit of the offer, the price, the loan. And so it can be a big turnoff for a seller if someone says shall not. Now, if you have a guy who has a really bad home maintenance, history, and you're looking at this house and you're going, there's no way, I don't want him fixing anything. Well, you can still always ask in the amendment that a licensed contractor shall do this, licensed electrician shall do that. You can always designate how and with whom something's going to be done. So if that gives your client a little ease in knowing that you can dictate how things are going to be done, but at the end of the day, it still is a negotiation. I know we could probably talk about home inspections for probably an hour if we got into real depth about it. I do have a flow chart that's really great. It's in Google Drive in the one spot under inspections, and it says like shall, and then it goes through all the options that could happen, and it says shall not, and it gives all the options that could happen. That's a really good handy tool to have, even if you have it printed and keep it with you when you're working with clients, so that you can explain how the shall and shall not work. So everybody's good? You're all tracking along and filling out your offer along with us?
Yep.
I see like 3 faces. Everyone else is on like no video. You guys are listening with one ear and watching TV and listening with the other.
Okay.
I have no idea what you guys are doing. All right. So then we go into radon. Now, if you don't have this box checked here, then this doesn't matter. This doesn't matter. This all like goes together. So if you're looking at, inspection and shall or shall not have right to cure, um, you know, what do you have the right to cure? If you don't mark that you're doing an inspection, you don't have anything to request of them to remedy. So make sure that you're actually checking your box up here to include inspection as a contingency. I put 5 days, think about it this way. If you write an amendment to a seller and you ask them for like 12 things and say there are major stuff going on in this house, if they can't decide, in 5 days, if they're going to remedy this or just let you go, your buyer is like kind of mentally checked out from this house. And they're like, you know what? I don't want it. I don't want anything to do with this house. And if the seller then does say, yes, I want a remedy, I'll fix everything on your list, you then have to resell this house to your buyer mentally. Like if they checked out, and I've had this happen, and you're like, guess what? The seller's going to fix everything. What? Well, we changed our mind. We don't want it anymore. No, the seller's fixing everything. We're good. They're going to remedy everything for you. And they're like, really? Wow, I didn't expect that. I was ready to go shopping. And this is where you don't ever want to get someone back out shopping again until you officially have the cancellation and mutual release, because you never know what's going to happen. People surprise you. Yeah. All right. So radon, if you're going to check the box here, then radon matters. And then this right to cure section down here matters. But if you don't check the box, then it doesn't matter if you put something here, and you technically should get rid of your crossouts. Like if you're not including radon, get rid of your crossout, get rid of the number of days, just go ahead and delete it out. It's easier to delete it, than to forget to actually put it in the first place. So radon, I typically use 2 days past what I do for my inspection, because sometimes your inspector, he's got like 4 of these computer radon kits and they're all out at properties. And he's like, oh, rats, we're doing our inspection Thursday, but I can't get in there today in order to, start that test. So I'll bring it on Thursday when we do our inspection. 2 days later, we'll get the radon results. So you can stagger. But again, you really need to find out when your inspectors are available, if they can do a quick turnaround for you. And that's going to drive what your dates are on that. So right to cure, obviously if radon comes out high, we want them to fix. So that's an easier shall or shall not. Financing. This is our fun one. Does everybody have some kind of a mortgage app downloaded on their phones? I know someone told me Carl's Mortgage. I use Zillow. But you need to have some kind of a tool in order to calculate this. You might be writing an offer at 9 o'clock at night and it's due at 10. You are not necessarily going to be able to get your lender on the phone and get these numbers. So if you talk to your lender up front and you find out roughly where are rates for them, because some clients have lesser credit scores than others. So they're going to have a rate bump. If you're over 680, you're going to get the good credit score. If you're 580 to 680, there's varying steps of, increase that you're going to have. If they're buying a condo, you're going to have a rate bump for that. If you're an investor and not buying an owner-occupied property, you're going to have a rate bump for that. So you need to know roughly what kind of rate we're looking at. And I've got all kinds of lenders who email me rate sheets on a weekly basis so I can keep up with where rates are at. But you need to know how to calculate this yourself. And this is one of the areas that I've been nitpicking on with some of you agents as I'm reviewing offers. So are we doing a conventional? Are you doing FHA? Is it WIDA? Is it VA? It's important to note what you're doing. You don't have to type the word loan here because it says by being able to obtain a written conventional first mortgage loan commitment. So you don't have to say the word loan, but you're just going to say if it's conventional or if it's something else. Now, line 250, I've been seeing a lot of agents putting 12 days, 14 days. Okay, this cannot be that short. This cannot be the same as what your home inspection is. Because your lender, if he or she is smart, they're not going to order the appraisal right away. I typically will send a welcome letter to my loan officer and say, hey, our mutual client has an accepted offer. Here is a copy of the offer so that I'm not relying on my client to start their loan process in a timely fashion. You know, they have to have their loan application done in the first 7 days. So they might still be rate shopping, checking out other lenders. So we want them to get going on this process. So I'm going to initiate it and send a copy of the offer to the loan officer. I'm going to also in that email tell them, we have our home inspection scheduled for Thursday. Can you please wait to order the appraisal until the buyer or myself give you the green light? Because if for some reason there's a lot of stuff happening on this property, think about it. The buyer's spending $500 to get their inspection and radon testing done. And then what if the seller says, no, I'm not doing anything, forget it. And the buyer's like, what? I don't want this. Do you want that buyer also to have shelled out $450 or $500 for an appraisal? And now this person's out $1,000 and they have no house. You have to do the inspection. That's their due diligence. That's their right to investigate. And it could protect them from $6,000 of problems that they didn't know about yesterday. So they really need to do that inspection. But you need to be talking to the lender about what can we do for loan commitment. And if I'm waiting to order appraisal until after my 12-day inspection, think about this. If you're putting 30 days down for loan commitment, that's 30 days from acceptance. You're sucking up 12 of those days for your inspection, and you're only leaving the inspector, with 18 days to finish that job. A lot of times when they order the appraisal, it takes the guy 5 to 7 days just to get out there. And when he goes physically to the property, he's not going to do the report right that day. Normally, they have certain days that they do visits, and then they have certain days that they do reporting. And so, it could be a week to 10 days before the report comes in to the bank after the guy's been out at the house. And then once they get the appraisal report, they need to send it in with all the buyer's personal documents, everything else that the processor's been working on, and they need to get the final underwriting done. So you're going to think about this too when you're thinking about your appraisal date. I always match my financing and appraisal date together, because even if the appraisal comes in, say it comes in on day 25, that loan has not been fully underwritten, and underwriters have a computer program that they use. They will double check after everything that happened in 2010 with the market crash and lenders having appraisers in their back pockets. They have a computer system that tells them if there's a comp maybe here that the appraiser should have used and they only used ones way out here. Why did they do that? So the underwriter is actually double checking. So even if the loan officer says, hey, appraisal's in and value's good, that's not necessarily releasing your appraisal contingency. There's no official document or process that happens to release appraisal, except for the fact that the loan is done and you get your loan commitment letter. So, you talk to the guy and see, okay, when are we closing? If we're closing in January, I always look at my calendar, and you want loan commitment due probably 5 to 7 days before closing, because that's going to give them enough time. If you're not familiar with the end process of how the loan works, once it's approved and out of underwriting, the processor has to forward that file to the loan closer. And the closer at the bank works with the title company. They have to prep all the documents, but at least 3 days prior to closing, they have to issue a preliminary CD. And the CD stands for closing disclosure. It's the actual closing statement that everyone signs at closing. If the lender does not send out that 3-day disclosure, or if there are numbers wrong on it, so there's a variance that can happen, it's a 1/4 point, and you won't know this, but if a problem happens, you'll learn about it quickly. So when they give their initial good faith estimate, and they say, hey, we're going to charge you like $2,000 in loan fees, and then you're going to have your escrows, your upfront fees. At the end, when they get ready for closing, if those two amounts, the initial one and then the one like the preliminary closing one, if they're off by more than a 1/4 point of that loan, then they have to start over by their 3-day disclosure. The buyer can have a right to refute that closing statement. Numbers can be investigated and changed. But if they don't send that out and give that person the right, some lenders go in advance and they send out a 10-day preliminary, and they do it electronically, and they avoid this like last minute issue. But if they miss that date, you cannot schedule closing, because the buyer legally has the right to see a preliminary closing statement 3 days before. And it's kind of a complicated, legal thing, but hopefully that makes sense. So getting your loan commitment about 5 days before closing is good, because then you know that you're ready to actually schedule closing. You've got your 3 days, the closer's not, in a frantic panic mode. So if you look at when you're closing, so if we're writing an offer today, if we're going to close January 29th, I would want my loan commitment by January 22nd, because today is December 15th. And so if they're going to answer us by tomorrow, I would just count out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so literally they could have, whoops. Yeah, they could have 7 weeks for processing. So in this case, if I was closing January 29th, I could allow like 45 days, and really give the lender ample time to process this. If I'm closing in 30 days, I better make sure that my lender can close in 30 days. And the buyer's not going to have the luxury then of having the ability to wait on ordering that appraisal. They would have to order it simultaneously. But if someone is desperate and they're selling their house, or they have their leases ending and they have to get into their new house, if they need to, then, they'll do that. And they know that they'll have to pay for that. The loan amount here. So what do you guys think Marcus should put as his down payment?
100,000.
Okay. Okay, so he's going to put 20% down, and he's not going to have any PMI. So if he's putting 100,000 down, my loan amount is going to be 400,000. So you're going to typically have a 30-year amortization and a term of 30 years. Your payments are going to be spread out over 30 years. If you're doing an adjustable rate, that's when you're going to have some fluctuation in the interest rates. And you would want to find out from the lender, okay, if they're doing an ARM, do they have, what's their initial lock-in period, their initial rate change? A lot of times it's 2, sometimes it's only 1. But what can their adjustment be? Are they locked in, say, on a 5-year ARM? So then you've got 60 here for your months, at which time it can increase not more than 2%. Each adjustment thereafter, not more than 1%. And then, your initial rate plus your cap. Normally loans have a cap of 6. So if I was getting a 3.5 loan on the onset, could my rate go up to 9.5 in a bad economic circumstance? Sure. So, normally you're going to be seeing a fixed rate financing. And if the rate that they were quoted today was 3%, I would likely make this 3.25. I always try and buffer my rate by 1/8 to 1/4%. So that, if rates go up over the weekend, by the time that they can get with the lender and get their rate locked, that we're not going to have to invoke, the seller pricing rule and say, hey, my rate went up over 3.25. I'm not buying the house any longer. I was quoted 3.125. I'm not willing to take anything higher than 3.25. Because then if rates change and they were at 3.5, the seller would have to buy down and pay points to get a rate of at least 3.25 for this client. Otherwise, the client could walk. And if 3.25 is the rate that I'm putting here as my maximum tolerance for rate that I'm willing to do, then 3.25 needs to be the rate that I use for line 252. So if I go on, I use the Zillow mortgage app and I use the payment calculator. So if I put in 500,000 as my purchase price and a down payment of 20%, my principal and interest is then 1637. Now on your calculator, it might show you, hey, what's the taxes? What's the insurance? If there were PMI. So it might be showing you a payment of like $1,900 or $2,000. That is their total payment, but that's not what we put into this field. Here we're looking.
Excuse me, Steph, did you put in 3.25?
Oh, you know what? I didn't change. I'm sorry. I didn't change my thing. It was lower. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, came up with a little bigger number.
1741. Thank you, Peg.
Yep.
I had something else in there, like 275. But so the total payment that your client is going to pay includes PMI, taxes, insurance. That's not the amount that we're using on line 252. We're only using principal and interest. Does everyone have some type of app that they can use to do these calculations?
Yes.
I don't.
Okay, if you don't, let me know. And I will help you get the Zillow mortgage app. I will help you walk through. We can do one-on-one and we can calculate out payments. But yeah, so I made the mistake, in a hurry, trying to just show you guys an example of what a lot of times agents do. I had 2.75 left over in my phone in the app from the last time. I didn't plug in 3.25, which is my maximum rate. That does not mean that this is what their payment is going to be. They could lock in at 2.99. Whatever they work out with the lender is what they're actually getting. This is saying, this is my worst case scenario. If I cannot get a rate of at least 3.25 or less, if my payment is going to be exceeding 1741, on just the repayment of principal and interest, then I don't have to continue with the purchase. I can force the seller to buy down points for me to get me this type of rate and payment situation. Okay,
Hey, Steph,
yeah.
do you ever use the mortgage calculator in the zip forms?
You know, I have not, because I wasn't using zip forms before at my other company. But yeah, that's a good point. Because look at right here, there's a little, if I click on this bar, there is a little calculator right here. Thank you, Catherine. So if I put in my loan amount, oops, what's happening? And my interest rate, my loan term is 360. Boom, 1741. So there you go. Yeah. All right, now how do I get out of this?
Oh, just click the X at the top right.
It's just because I have my screen so blown up
Oh,
that I didn't have an X. Okay, we have 5 minutes left and we are on page 5 of this offer. So I'm going to try and wrap this up for you guys. Is everyone okay if we go maybe a minute or 5 minutes over?
yes.
I actually have to log out now. I gotta go pick up my son from school.
Yeah,
okay.
that's fine. I'm going to just keep this going because this is going to get sent out to other people so that they have the recording, and we'll just wrap this up. Okay, so we have our interest rate. We've gone through that. We're probably not going to be asking for seller financing because we just want to get our own loan. And so we don't want to deal with that. So we're not marking any of this, you know, for seller financing. If I was doing a cash offer, right here it says, if this offer is not contingent on financing commitment within X number of days and suggested 7, buyer shall deliver to seller either written verification of proof of funds to close or fill in the blank. Typically, I like to send my proof of funds along with my offer because even though I might have a cash offer, does the seller know anything about my buyer? Does my buyer legitimately have money to buy this level of a property? So we want to make sure that we're sending it, you know, if it's a matter of they're reviewing 8 offers, is the seller going to go, oh, I'm going to grab this cash offer and turn down 7 other people and I have to wait then 7 days for my guy to turn in his proof of funds? That's a risk. So if you provide it up front, you're going to help the seller to pick your offer. Okay. So appraisal, we did talk about this when we were talking about financing, in that we want the appraisal contingency to be paired with what we're putting for financing for our loan commitment. Because once we issue our loan commitment, we're then releasing all of those, you know, permissions and contingencies, you know, in our offer. Oh, look at this. We don't have a strikeout on here. So we want to highlight seller shall have the right to cure. Unless my buyer wants to be responsible for paying a $5,000 or $10,000 appraisal shortage, then, you know, you want to have that marked that the seller shall have right to cure. And we probably only need to give them 5 days to do that. Once we get that appraisal, we send it over to them. You know, their agent is going to work with them on the pricing and say, hey, you know, their lender will not give them more money. They won't give them a percentage based on the purchase price. They're only giving them a percentage based on you know, what the appraisal came in at. Okay, so I did get an offer recently from one of you guys that had a home sale contingency. This is not something that's being commonly used right now in our marketplace. You know, it's the market's just moving so fast that we have to have our property sold already. A lot of times people are selling and then they're renting before they're coming out. But if our market starts to swing and change, we might find this coming more often. So we'll give it a couple minutes, so that we can get you guys an understanding. So if I'm going to say that I have to list my house prior to buying, I'm going to pick on Dana again. Before I can buy Dana's house, I'm going to sell mine. What does that mean exactly? Does it mean that my house is already on the market, professionally marketed? Does it mean that I need to get it on the market next week? So we need to clarify specifically what that means. And if I already have an accepted offer, then you want to spell that out, because that's a lot better. If I can say, hey, buyer's primary residence is already under contract and has successfully passed inspection and appraisal. That means a lot more to me than just saying, oh yeah, she's got to go sell her house. So if we're doing a sale of home contingency, we're going to mark in our X, and then we're going to say, where do I live? I live at 123 Main Street in Menominee Falls. That sounds like a commercial. I could spell, oh my gosh, Menominee Falls. Okay. So that's got to sell. By when? Well, when am I closing on this property? If I'm closing on January 29th, I can technically say that my house also needs to sell on or before January 29th. So I could go to closing at 9 a.m., sell my house. If I can coordinate things where my money is all going to be with the same title company, meaning I use and seller uses the same title rep, my money's in one building, we can close back to back. Otherwise, I have to wait a 3-hour interval between the two closings so that money can be wired over. They're not going to allow me to take a check. It's just a notepad. But they're not going to allow me to take a check from closing on Main Street, because I could do one of these and snap and deposit a picture of this, and people do it. But guess what? They can find you. So don't try. But I could snap and deposit, and I could be giving a faulty check. In Wisconsin, we're a good funds state. So they've said, you know what? No more of this. You're not carrying a check for 150 grand from your net proceeds of your sale from one title company over to the next. We're going to wire the money. So that's where you have to wait 3 hours in between, unless, say, you're all using, Nightberry Focus Title as one big happy family. All the money is in-house there. So you would want to coordinate that in advance, that you're, having the seller order from the same place that the buyer as a seller ordered from, if that makes sense. So I can close up until January 29th. But what happens if I don't close? So if I don't actually have an offer to purchase on my house yet, then if I don't put one in, the listing agent's going to counter, and they're going to put in a bump clause. Now, my offer is going to get reviewed and it's going to get accepted, but it's subject to, so you can put in 48, you can put in 72, but it's subject to my house selling. So if Catherine is the listing agent on this house that I'm writing on, Catherine does not go in the system and mark her property as AO. It's not going to get that, I'll do it this way. It's not going to get that ugly red C. It's not going to be under contract, because I still have to sell my house first before I can come and buy hers. What she has to do is she has to tell Peg and Ann and Marcus, before they want to seriously write an offer, she has to tell them, hey, I have a home sale contingent offer. You guys got a free and clear buyer? Bring it on, right? You're asking them to come in and bring you a free and clear offer so that you can bump. So once she accepts me, I'm accepted. then she'd have to get an offer, say from Peg. She gives Peg 48 hours to stew on it. Peg's thinking, okay, what can I do? I'm going to go back and talk to my lender. Am I going to get a pre-approval revision where I don't have the contingency for selling my house? Can I afford to pull an equity line from my house, put money down, carry my mortgage plus the new house mortgage? If Peg's buyers can't do that, then Peg says, okay, well, can we produce a buyer? If Peg can miraculously get an offer accepted and she can produce an accepted offer, she can say, okay, we're going to remove our home sale contingency. We've got an offer now. Then she kicks me to the curb and I'm out of here. But if Peg comes back and says, all right, Catherine, we can't get a buyer. We can't get approved for owning 2 properties at once. We're going to let it go. They have to cancel their offer. Then, they're going to, continue working with me then at that point. So using all these different names, confusing myself. We have all these different story samples going on. All right, so our bump clause. So what else would need to be removed here? So if we're gonna, have proof of bridge financing, we talked about that, written waiver of closing of that property. So you'd want proof, that they had an accepted offer. And then to really confuse things, we can talk about writing a secondary offer. So, these are situations that I would say happen less often. And when you have a situation, you'll reach out for help. Because trying to talk about all of this, in an hour and a half or an hour and 45 minutes, is a lot for you to kind of grasp. And that's where, we'll have this on recording and you can refer back. But just know, that if you're writing subject to a house sale, you can do the 48-hour bump clause. They would ask you for either an updated pre-approval letter showing that you don't have the contingency or that you have a buyer, and you would provide that offer along with. What I was saying is about if I actually had my house sold, what I could do is down here, I can write buyer's primary residence has an accepted offer and has successfully passed inspection and appraisal. And that would make it that I actually already have an offer on my house. I can provide you a copy of it, but I still have it on the market, and I still need those buyers to close. I can't close unless these buyers close. So if something happens where my buyer loses his job, I have this contingency in place that my offer is still contingent upon 123 Main Street selling. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So if I go back up where our bump clause is, and you can write it without the bump clause, and you can wait for the listing agent to counter you, and they'll put in, what they're requiring. A lot of times, let's say that your buyer has not yet listed. What you may do then is you'll indicate that they're going to list with you. So in a market different than the market that we've been in for the last few years, you might say, because for a listing agent to accept an offer with a home sale contingency, what do we know about let's say Stephanie is the buyer. What do we know about Stephanie's house? Is Stephanie going to FSBO this house? Is Stephanie going to be wrong on her listing price? So we could say buyer's primary residence shall be officially marketed in MLS, or, you know, instead of officially, we could say professionally. Right. So buyer's primary residence shall be professionally marketed in MLS within 48 hours if I can type correctly, of acceptance. Right. So if I'm not doing this one where I already have an offer, and then I'm saying buyer's primary residence shall be professionally marketed in MLS within 48 hours of acceptance. What that's telling me is that, you know, Stephanie, the buyer, has a plan with Peg to list her house. And so Catherine is going to say, okay, Peg, tell me more about Stephanie's house, you know, and Peg can say to Catherine, well, geez, it's going to be 175 in West Dallas and it's fully remodeled. It's going to sell in 2 minutes, right? And then Catherine will have a peace of mind going, okay, we can accept this offer because we know that we have our bump clause. But, you know, if we don't get someone else to come in and bump, we can, in fact, you know, work with her because the house is legit. It's going to be priced correctly. Peg knows what she's doing. So as a listing agent, I would always look at, if someone has a bump clause, look up their house on MLS, see what it is, see how long it's been on the market. You got something sitting 105 days on market and no price reduction, they got to make a price drop. They need to make some changes. I might not want to be sitting on that kind of an offer. Okay. So we kind of joked about getting into secondary offers. I think we handled this on one of our group calls the other day too. But you know, if you're going to write a secondary, the advantage is that if it's a tough market and there's very low inventory, if you want to be automatically put into first place on a property, if buyer number one falls apart, it's a way to secure yourself a home in a very difficult marketplace. You know, you would still want to have a home inspection contingency on there, and you'd want to know, why did buyer number one fall apart? Was it based on their financing, or was it based on the home inspection? Because if it was based on inspection, it's kind of like, you know, then you're not super excited. But if it was just a mishap, they lost their job, they had a financing snafu, they weren't legitimately pre-approved with credit, assets, and income all verified up front, you know, that's a big deal. Closing prorations, you're pretty much going to put a dash in here. This is another big one here. You're pretty much always going to use line 366. And this is simply because we're going to prorate the taxes based on what last year's tax bill was. If you've got an expensive home and you're closing, you know, October, November, you may want to say that taxes will be prorated based on 105%, and then copy line 366 of net general from preceding year. I'm not going to type the whole thing out specifically, you know, but you get the drift. So the reason that you would do that is because the seller, if you anticipate you're going to have an increase in taxes, you know, like $800 to $1,000 increase. Well, should the seller be responsible for 10 months worth of, you know, that hefty increase? So in a seller's market though, what we've been seeing is some offers even say no proration. The buyer will just pay all the taxes for this year. I'm buying in September and I'm just willing, I want the house so bad. You know, instead of raising the purchase price, it's another way that you can manipulate and give a seller more for their house if you take on their taxes. It's a rare occurrence that this happens, but it's something else that, it's like pulling a trick out, out from your sleeve, that, you could do. If you have 8 offers, I would probably suggest not fighting over like a $200 tax proration, because, you're just nitpicking. So normally you're going to have the first box, which is that you're just going to take last year's tax bill. You're going to do a proration on it. Seller will pay from the day prior to closing, back through January 1st. Buyer is going to be responsible for the day of closing through the end of the year. The reason that you would use some of these other ones is if you were dealing with new construction and there was not an official tax bill yet. Be careful though, because the assessment is only done what's there on January 1st. So if the builder went and they dug a hole and the basement was poured, if you had a $500,000 new construction, you have basically the value of a lot and a hole. You don't have framing and all of that. So you would look at maybe sales price multiplied by the current mill rate. Is it $25 per thousand? The builder might not like that option. So you have to find some kind of a fair, agreement. Once the contract is done, you do not necessarily want to leave buyer and seller to reprorate or recalculate or configure taxes and get money to one another. That sounds like a lawsuit waiting to happen. And off the top of my head, I can't think of a good time or a good example that you would want to use that. Conveyance of title, you normally are just going to put a dash in here. And so gap endorsement is going to be at seller's expense. So you want the seller to give free and clear saleable title over to your buyer. They're going to check special assessments. They're going to check for everything that could be out there, sidewalks, water, sewer, updates, especially with Milwaukee with like the lead. So you want to be mindful of reading your titles and checking for any kind of special assessments. You're likely not doing something with a leased property. If it was, you'd want to make sure that you indicate leased property on here. And let's scroll down. And then finally we hit page 10. So this line should automatically come in if you're using the Office template. So if any deadline or contingency falls on a Saturday, Sunday, or a federal holiday, it is automatically extended to the next business day. So you're putting your closing date down, you're not looking at the calendar, you forget that Martin Luther King Day is in January, and you're closing on, was that the 17th, I think, 17th or 18th of January. So you wanna make sure that, wires are not gonna happen, banks are gonna be closed, so you don't wanna close on that day. So if you're looking at having something there, obviously you're gonna put yourself here for delivery. You would put your email and then the listing agent's email here. The listing agent's name would go here on line 557. And probably the most critical line is 573, your attachments. You need to make sure that you attach addendum A and addendum S here. As we noted on this MLS listing, they did not have the addendum S online, so you're going to need to get that from the listing agent. If you fill out your addendum A and you have all kinds of stuff on there, like you have a home warranty, you have a $3,000 closing cost credit, if you don't write addendum A right here, none of addendum A matters and it is not made part of your offer, and your buyer would not be getting their home warranty or their closing cost credit. So you want to make sure that you're filling that out in this spot. Okay, 2 hours, we did it. But, we went through the buyer agency as well. Questions? That was a lot. Do you guys fall asleep?
I was just gonna say, no immediate questions.
Okay.
I just wanted to confirm, Steph, when you said that the addendum S is needed for a property that was built in 1978, was that right?
Anything
Okay.
prior to 1978.
Okay.
Mhm. Now, what you will find, like if you're working with, say, a Shore West agent, you could have a house from 2000 and they're going to have an addendum S on their file. Because some companies do not trust their agents to know when a form is needed and not needed. And in order to close, they just simply have to have all these forms on every single property. So if you have a listing and you're like, well, it was built in 2008, I'm not doing an addendum S. And someone's like, hey, I need an addendum S. You just tell them, I don't need one. And if they have to fill one out, then they'll send it to you and they'll make you and your seller fill it out. But, you know, I usually just say it's not needed.
Okay, great. Thanks, Steph.
What else?
This is helpful. Every time I hear the information, it sticks more.
Yep. And it's just doing that constant review. I mean, like I have said a couple of times, you guys should be doing at a minimum one offer a week. You want to keep this language of real estate, language of contracts in your mind. If you don't use it, it's like forgetting Spanish that you learned in high school. You know, you're not practicing it. And so you're not fluent in it. You want to be so fluent in this that you can pop off an offer in 40 minutes. You want to be so fluent that you can explain the offer to your client. I would suggest writing offers on your own and then either doing a Zoom call or meeting later and getting together with the client. Normally, you know, I'll send it to them and I'll just say, hey, call me when you have it open on your screen. We'll go through it. I can go through and explain it in about 20 minutes. Because you're giving them the highlights, you know, you're giving them bullet points. Oh, Peg, did you have something?
I'm sorry. Our next step then would be to put it into DocuSign,
Yes.
send it to you.
Yep. So what you're going to do, and have you guys all done a DocuSign send out?
I know.
Okay. All right. So yeah, anyone who has not, I just want to make
I haven't.
Okay, so what you're gonna do then is you would save it. You're on one of the forms. When you're on a form, you click over here to this E sign to the little pen.
Oh.
And once you click that, it's gonna give you an option that if you want to add additional documents. So we're gonna click other documents to select. So I did my buyer agency for this client. I did my NBR. I don't need disclosure to customers. We didn't get through it right this minute, but say I did do my addendum A. You're going to do the HSA. And then you should be good. So then are you with me, Ann, on this?
Yep, I am. I'm with you. I'm watching as well.
Okay. And then if you hit close then you see all your forms are here. And then you're going to follow the green arrows. It says next. So once you hit next, then it's going to give you your people. So your buyer. So you're going to click on Marcus or whoever your buyer is. And then it's yourself. You want to click on yourself. And then you're going to hit close. And then you hit next. So it's always close and next or save and next. You're just kind of toggling back and forth. Now you can see on my screen, it's rolling on DocuSign. So it's like it's loading. So then what I can do is if I look at Marcus up here on the top left, there is a pull down. So Marcus is orange, an I in blue. So when I was doing this, I didn't write in a date. So if you find something like that that you missed, I can click on myself and I can click date signed and I just drag and drop it. So if I want to look at, and I mean, because I was talking, so I didn't write in even binding acceptance and closing date. You know, I didn't put those in. I was doing more talking than filling out. But if I scroll down to page 10, you'll see that it put in spots for me already. So I've got Marcus's signature and I dated it for him. So I can click this date signed, and over here on the right, I can click delete. Now, what would be really nice is if we actually had the addendum S on this one, because there's a checkbox that you have to do. Let me just pretend that we have a checkbox. Because on addendum S, you're going to check that they waive their right to lead-based paint testing. And then right beneath that is where your buyer's going to sign. And because this property didn't have those documents online, I didn't save them and grab them in. So if I hit checkbox, which is over here on the left, and let's say I just drag it here. Now, once I click that there, on the right side, it gives me these other options, and there's checkbox values. So if I click on checkbox values, and I click this over here on the right, it's actually going to appear with a check mark. Same thing, like if I wanted to add a text box, let's say I needed to say that he was an LLC and it didn't work for some reason. I can drag, I can increase and decrease the size, and I could say Martinez Development LLC. So I can either type it here or I can add it over here on the right side. It gives you add text. So if I type it there on the right, you see it's typing in my little blue box. But when I go to have him sign, I have to make sure that I switch up top and I click Marcus before I drag his signature somewhere. On the NBR, you'll see it put initials for you already because these are formatted documents for us. So when you're adding in the RECR for a buyer, and when you're adding in the addendum S for the buyer, you're going to have to just drag and drop. It's going to be much like, and I think I put my HSA in here. So the HSA document, you cannot like fill out in zip forms. So if I'm just going to waive this one, I'm going to grab Marcus's signature and I'm going to drag and drop his signature down here. And look at how huge that is. So I can shrink that and make it more sizable for this field. And then I can drag and drop the date signed. If I'm doing the waiver, I at a minimum want to just put in some basic information. So if I do a text box, you know, and I type 123 Main Street, just so I'm declaring at least what property this is for. And then the cool thing, if you're on yourself, you can grab name. You can bop your name here. Just going to put my name. Then I can drag email. This doesn't work for your client, but it works for you. So I can bop that, and then company, I can drag and I can drop KW here. So that's pretty cool. And then checkbox, again, I would have to put that I'm representing the buyer, and then I have to check it over here on the right side so that that gets filled in. But that's really all I would need to do if I'm doing a waiver, as long as I get the client to sign that they're not requesting a home warranty from the seller. The other thing on here, I wish it were a little more prevalent where it is, but up top here where it says actions, this is where you're going to grab and send a message. So this is, it's going to be, Kramer Street. And I'm going to say, hi, Marcus, please follow the yellow prompts to sign your offer. Whoops. And hit finish. Because once he hits finish, then it's going to auto-populate to me and I'm going to have a copy of it. Okay, so then I would hit send, the yellow button on the top right up here. But I definitely want to have a note in there for him. And if you didn't get all the way through your offer, I mean, you can do this later too. You don't have to send it right this minute. But just so that you get the practice of sending it, having someone sign, and then seeing what it looks like in your email, where you find it in DocuSign under completed forms. It's going to be helpful for you to do, a couple of practice rounds just to get and receive those offers. So everybody good with that?
Yep. Thank you, Stephanie, for walking through that.
Sure thing.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right.
Very helpful.
So
It's really, thanks.
good. I'm glad. Yeah, there's just a lot of like quirky things, that come up. And I think just really going through it like line by line really helps kind of break it apart. And you just get a little more in depth on lines and why they need to be filled out and what can happen if you don't have something completed all the way. So, all right, with that, I think we're probably good and we're over time. So thank you guys for sticking it out and hanging in all the way to the end and getting the documents completed and signed. So have a great night. And again, if you have any questions on your offers, just feel free to reach out.
All right,
Wonderful.
thank you.
Steph. Have a good day as well.
Okay, we'll see you.
Have a good day, guys.
Thanks.